a world premiere, the new Northwind templates plural. Tom van Stiphout from Phoenix, Arizona, has led the project for almost 2 years now, and we are going to see what now, Tom? Please tell us.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, we're super excited to show this to you. It literally went live yesterday. This is the world premiere of what we internally call Northwind 2.0. You will not see that version number anywhere. Let's call it Northwind Starter and Northwind Dev Edition. I will not be talking much about the Starter Edition today. It is really meant for people who are completely new to Access and are just interested in knowing a little bit about what it is. We will, kind of read the room here, and I think most people are more interested in the Dev Edition because they are developers themselves. My name is Tom van Stiphout. As Peter said, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, working for a small software development company, doing mostly Access, but also .NET programming from time to time. And my co-presenter is Kim Young from Chicago. Hi, Kim. Are you here?
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hello. And she and I are two of the 5 core people who took on this project. It was not something that, Microsoft was super interested in doing themselves. They were busy with other stuff. We know we're dealing with a small team thinking about Access development team. And so I had approached project managers in the past about this idea of, hey, can we maybe do this for you? And then you publish it. And previous PMs were not so interested until I did the same thing with Michael Aldrich, about a year and a half ago. And he said yes. So here we are. Some of you may already have downloaded the Northwind database, and for those of you in Germany, I apologize about the snafu with localization. That has already been fixed. I'm running the fixed version here today. It is in the pipeline to be deployed. I don't know exactly where that stands, but coming very soon, that will be available to you. Okay. We're looking at Northwind 1. That's collectively what I call all prior versions. We know that there have been older versions before the one that you know as current. But we all call it Northwind 1, and we have all hated some aspects of it. And of course, with this project, we wanted to correct those. And just to show you a little bit of 1 or 2 of those items, here is the data model of the Northwind 2 Developer Edition. You will see that there are no spaces anywhere in these tables. The diagram is nicely laid out so that you can actually kind of follow along with not too many crisscrosses. You will also see that, yes, we do have some here and there attachment fields. Some people really frown on that. We did want this to be a showcase, and it is a feature of Access. And frankly, I don't really mind very much to store an image of a product category right there in the table. We have 20 records, 20 small images. For me, it's in the no big deal category. Unfortunately, if you then, if you then create an ACCDT and deploy that and create then a new ACCDB instance, all my pretty relations are gone. It turns out that that process does not preserve the layout of the diagram. So Unfortunately, also some MSIS tables are here. I really hate that. I think it's an imperfection that should be fixed, but you know, too bad, so sad, I guess. We will, try to get at least a screenshot in the documentation. We don't have it today. We just discovered this problem about a week ago. You will also see in our template, as you look at it, that this is not an application for any particular company. Yes, there is the narrative of Northwind traders, and this is what they do, but it is a showcase. And we want to, for example, showcase that list forms can be data sheets, they can be continuous forms, they can be split forms. All of those will be there. In a real commercial application, you would probably, well, either choose very wisely or, be a little bit more consistent with how you select what you're doing. But if you want to see what Access can do at a little bit higher level, then all those list forms, will be present in Northwind. So our inconsistencies were intentional for the most part. We have in this these new templates a lot of firsts, things that have never been done with templates before. And we suffered from that a little bit when we started to create ACCDTs towards the end of the process. We had to work around about half a dozen issues. And some of that you can still see in the code. Some of it I may point out, some of it I will let sleeping dogs lie. Some of it Microsoft is already in the process of fixing. And it was, to name one example, we had data macros on our tables to populate the tracking fields, created by, changed by kind of fields and the dates. And in order to put the name in there, we wrote a custom VBA function to return the name of the logged in user. Well, it was not supported in ACCDT. And so we had to work around that. What we ended up doing is truly a workaround, but fun for you to see the code when you delve into it. We dropped the data macros, created the ACCDT, and when you run the ACCDB that is created from it for the first time, we put the data macros back in. The data macro code itself, the XML, is sitting in a table. We read that value and stuff it in each table that needs to have it. So that is an example of, we had to work around some things. We couldn't wait another 9 months for Microsoft to go fix this. And have it be not just in the current channel, but also in semi-annual Enterprise Edition, which would be January of 24. So we didn't want to do that, so we worked around it. Kim, I think I'd like to turn it over to you and talk about one of the firsts that we have in the Northwind application.
Are you going to show the video, Tom?
Which is the documentation, yes. And I want to start with, good point. I want to start with the video, which is right here on available. It's available when you start up the application as well as on this Learn page. But let's just all watch that for a moment.
The Northwind Developer Sample Database is designed by developers for developers to help you learn how to program in Microsoft Access and create your own custom solutions. The developer template builds on the starter template, so we recommend checking that one out first. On the welcome screen, select Continue to get started. Enter your name and title to create a user record. This information is not shared with anyone and exists only in this database file. Select Add Me, and the orders list appears. For this template, we've set up a custom navigation pane, organizing database objects according to Northwind's business processes. And we've also created a custom ribbon containing commands relevant to Northwind's workflows. You can use this ribbon as an example for your own projects. We've added a drop-down list where you can see your most recently added orders and purchase orders. Select Purchase Orders to open the corresponding list. Select Companies to bring up a list of Northwind's customers, shippers, and vendors. Select Products to open a list of items that Northwind sells. This form draws on data from orders and purchase orders so you can track inventory. Items with low inventory are highlighted in yellow. The database also includes a variety of reports showing orders and employee information. We've even created an example fall catalog report. Just select the report and then preview. Use the page navigation buttons at the bottom to see the full report. This template is designed to help you learn about Access, so we've added a ribbon group for help topics. Select Learn to open a page that goes into more depth about the template. You can also select the yellow information icon to get more information about a specific form. The Northwind Working Group looks forward to hearing from you on the Access Tech community and other forums.
All right. Great. So Kim, did you want to point out some more about
Sure.
documentation?
So can you
Many clapping hands, Tom.
Okay.
So Tom, can you take us to the main documentation page and point out the yellow icons? So this takes us to online documentation that we created for every process, all of the forms within the database. You can get back to the main one, to the developer edition, which links to everything.
Oh yeah, you at the bottom, right?
Right. We were not, in Northwind, we saw code, but we didn't really know why it was done that way, what was the decision-making process, and what could you do. So as a team, and we had many discussions over this, we didn't want to try to teach. There are so many great articles and books already written. We wanted to talk to you about the decision-making process of why we chose one thing over another, what our business rules were, how we implemented them, and you can find all of that. And I know reading documentation isn't anybody's favorite, but hopefully this will at least make your list of things I should know about. And all the sections are consistent. So that's all available online. There's a yellow icon with an eye on all of the forms. You click on that eye and you go to specific content for the particular form that you're on. The next thing is purchase orders. So Tom showed you we have a feature matrix. So if we said to you we're highlighting things that Access can do, we wanted to tell you where you could find them within the app. So we also put in some basic help, such as, how to apply a predefined filter. We set that up, and then we have online help, which is the second link. And if you went one column further over, you would get in-app help, like you hit F1 on the topic. And this is what I was asking Jeff if he could review for us, because maybe we should have put something different in the link and have gotten more specific content to help you with that. We also created the Learn page where we talk to you about what's happening within the application, about the template, what are the features, having multiple form instances, cascading combo boxes. So we have lots of documentation. In the code, we have a great deal of documentation too, and we can show it to you in a couple of different formats. So Tom, if you could go to the code for product list command add product. So here, what we see is an example of alternate syntax. We showed you the way we implemented it, but then we gave you another way below it that you could achieve the same result, but have done it differently. If there was a particular reason we did not want to, we put something in and then we don't use it, and we'll identify why it's not a best practice and why we didn't implement it. We also have alternate implementations where we did something one way within the application, which we'll get into in a moment. Tom, if you could go to the select vendor dialog code and go to the form open. It's form select vendor, right? So if we go to, so right here, this is an alternate implementation of how to parse open args, which contain many values rather than a single value. This is the only place in the application it was done this way. All of the others use a dictionary feature, which Tom will get into in a little bit. But we called it out here as an alternate implementation to using the string dictionary, which is built into the application, and we show you how to use that with key value pairs. Tom, if you go to form order details, the load event. So right here, Tom, just below line 50, although this code works perfectly, it is not a best practice. A lot of developers use this and do this, but we talked about why it's not a best practice and gave you another way to do this. You have to find what works best for you, and whatever it is that you choose to do in your application, the most important thing is to be consistent. And we struggled. We had to say to each other a lot, I think you're teaching now, and we'd have to take something out, or, you know, have endless debates about text and what was going up on the web pages. And I think we spent just about as much time, maybe half as much time, on the documentation as we did actually writing the code. So we hope that you can all learn a lot from this. So Tom, if you'd like to talk about the MRU and the ribbon.
Yeah. Let's close a few things. So as I open orders, because I want to review them, you can already see a couple of things. First of all, we are multi-instance. The idea is that, you know, the sales department gets interruptions, wants to compare one order to another. That kind of thing is kind of common. This is somewhat common to do in professional applications, that there are these opportunities to have multi-instance. What we then also do is we add those orders to an MRU list. We do the same thing with purchase orders. So if we open a few purchase orders, we will see that those are added to MRU as well. And as I close everything, I can come back in here and reopen them from here. There's really very little code that does that. What we try to do is encapsulate a lot of code in a central function and then make it very easy for you, for example, sitting in the order form, to add to MRU. You just call add to MRU in this particular case, and then there is a function that does that. It adds a row to a table, and it trims back the table so that it doesn't get too long, because we don't want the drop down to be 50 items. And so we have that available for you to take a look at. Alt F11, if we just take a quick look at add to MRU, which is sitting in mod global, I believe. Yep. We're doing exactly that. We're checking to make sure that we're doing orders and purchase orders, because those are the only two that we really implemented. Because there are some things that you have to do. We're now working with a ribbon. And so ribbons work, you know, have their own syntax and way to work with them. So as I said a minute ago, we're doing an insert into the MRU table. I will get to this string format function in a little bit. we're inserting into the MIU table, we're executing that insert statement. We are then trimming back what needs to be trimmed back. And then this is the critical line. We tell the ribbon to refresh the MIU list, Shift F2, which is, yes.
Can you decipher MRU for non-Americans? You are talking all the way.
Good point. MRU stands for most recently used. So it is very similar to in Word, when you go to File Open, you see the list of most recently opened documents. This is the same idea, most recently opened records. So to refresh the ribbon, all you have to do is invalidate that control. If you're a Windows SDK programmer, you will recognize this term. It basically tells the system, go refill yourself. And the ribbon then does that work. And it does it in the same way that some of you may have learned that you can fill a combo box in many different ways. You can set the row source to a query. You can concatenate a string and use a value list. And there's also a way where you use quote unquote callback functions, where the combo box calls you back and says, I want to fill myself, give me the data. And that is how the ribbon works as well. I'm not going to go into the detail of that, but if you were to look at mod ribbon callback, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 callback functions that that particular object in the ribbon calls, because it does something like this. Give me the count of items. And you say 5. Give me the first ID. You give it an ID. Give me the first text, the label value. And then for the second label, and so on and so on. And then at the end it asks, which of those do you want to select? So about 5 functions are used to fill it. They're all simple functions, but you'll need to go look at it for yourself. In this particular case, we're just returning the record count in this by ref argument. And that tells the comma box, oh, I need to call you 5 times. All right, that's it for the ribbon. I want to come back to this order form a little bit more and observe that we now have cascading combo boxes here. We have fruit, and this is the fruit products. We have dairy, and these are the dairy products. And so we implemented cascading combo boxes to give you a way to look at that as well as, you know, one more thing that we wanted to share with you about things that you can do with Access that perhaps you've thought about, perhaps you've even tried to implement, perhaps you've read about, that it is possible, but you're not quite sure how to. And there is also a help page, the same help page I already had opened a minute ago. Under programming orders, we talk about cascading combo boxes and the fact that there are 4 steps necessary in this technique. You can read about that yourself, but if you follow these 4 steps, first of all, you can see that that is indeed what we implemented. And this is also your roadmap for doing this for yourself. So that's it for cascading combo boxes. Pretty tricky to get it implemented just right. But once you have it, it's a pattern that you see ways to use in many cases, in many different scenarios, I think. There are other things here on the screen that are kind of a first as far as Access templates are concerned, and one of them is these workflow buttons. And Kim, maybe you can talk about that part.
So part of being able to talk about inventory, which we're going to do in a little bit, we needed the holy grail of 3. We needed purchase orders because Northwind has to get stock. We have to put it in inventory and then we sell it. And we need a workflow, right? When can something be advanced? So Tom, if you want to go to create invoice or pick a workflow, add an order.
You want to add a new order? Or?
Sure.
So here we have an order. Let's buy some stuff. One of these. Tap, tap, tap. All right, that's an order.
Okay, so we're going to click create invoice.
So here's it. Yeah.
Here's an error that occurs because we are implementing two different types of validation. For most other forms, for all the other forms, companies, products, we call a function called validate form me, and we pass the form. And it looks at the table that the form is based on and determines what are the required fields. And if those required fields are not filled in, it turns yellow and tells the user, you have not entered all the required data, please do so. But here, it's more complicated. What is required depends on where you are in the workflow. So we needed to also be able to implement this and say, shipping fee is required for the invoice, but there will be other things as we move forward. And Tom, I don't know when you want to look at the code for this.
If there's time, we can look at the code. For now,
okay, so let's do create invoice now because you filled in the shipping fees too.
And here's our invoice report.
And you can. And now we're going to say, well, we want to ship. We're ready to go. So let's click ship order. Oh, well, we're missing something. It can't be shipped until we have filled out the related shipping fields. This is incremental validation that's being done within the form. This happens for the workflow because it depends where you are. So these are great. And if we get time, we'll come back and look at that code. Tom, I don't know if you want to move on to the string functions right now or talk about this more.
No, I think this is good. What people take away from this, I think, is that we have validation in a number of different ways. For example, if I don't fill out the quantity, I will get a validation error there as well. I cannot show you that anymore. The record is now locked because we're past the create invoice status. So you can't really change the quantities anymore. So there's a number of different ways that we use validation. It is also super simple to implement. It's really 3 lines of code per form. The mod validation has the hard stuff that you can peruse at your leisure. But if you just want to borrow that code, put that module in your application, and you add these 3 lines of code to each form, that's all it takes to do validation. I think what we can do at this point is indeed look at the string functions. That's another area where we've done some work to show you what's possible. Maybe these are things you're already doing on your own. Maybe these are things that you wanted to do. So a string table is nice because all the messages can go here. If your customer says, I want a different message, or you just hate to see all these literal strings in your code, and especially if you're trying to keep them somewhat organized or reusable. This is one of the ways to do that, right? Put them all in a table, but then you can take it one step further and have replaceable parameters. And maybe write some code that says, look at these replaceable parameters. There can be 0 or more of those parameters. And just go ahead and replace them before you display the value. We use that concept in a number of different ways, and I'd like to take you for a spin.
and Tom, while you're navigating, one of the benefits of this string table is when your message comes up and your users send you a screenshot or tell you that it happened, if you know what the message says, you can find the message ID, and then you can find all the places in your application where that message is being called from. So that can be very helpful in your debugging as you're helping your customers use your app.
Yep. And so we have an enum that has the same ID values as the string ID in this table. So I can do something like
Tom, are you talking?
no, I'm not. It's hard to type and talk at the same time. So that is the effect of replacing the curly bracket 0 and 1 with the values that you supplied. So what we see here is the use of getString, which obviously dips into this table to fetch the value, and then it calls this function string format that does the actual replacement. So let's look at that, because maybe not everyone is familiar with this concept. I also want to say, even before we delve into this, the strings, I think waiting with, how should I say this? Focusing, when you write a string, being able to focus on the text and not worry so much about your parameters. I think replaceable parameters is a real benefit. You can make, I think, the text better and easier to understand if you say, we will deal with, the number 0 at a later point in time. I just want to be able to read this text and make sure that it makes sense to me. We will see in a moment, we do the same thing for SQL statements, that you can focus on the statement itself and not really have to worry too much about how am I going to escape a string with single quotes or a date with hash marks. You can just focus on the SQL statement and then let this function take care of that for you. So in its simplest incarnation, we take a string such as hello 0, this is 1. And then this is a param array where you can pass in a variable number of parameters, be it 0, be it 7, I don't care. And they just become an array of parameters, which you can then use to do your little replace thing. Because that's essentially what we're doing. We're finding curly bracket 0, and we're stuffing parameter 0 into that placeholder. And continue in your for loop. So that is how you get hello world, this is ET. Now you can take it one step further if you want to do this with SQL and essentially do the same thing right here. We do the same thing, but what we've also done is escaped our parameters and say, if the var type of a parameter is a string, then we know that we should escape it with single quotes. If it is a date, we know we should escape it with hash marks. And so by centralizing this in one place, you can just focus on the SQL statement itself, such as the one that I already closed, that I was showing a minute ago. Let's see, where was that? It was, I believe, in yes. Insert into MIU, employee ID, table name, values 0, 1, 2, 3. And so it will do the right thing in terms of escaping the parameters, the 4 parameters that we have here that need to go into those replaceable parameters. So for me, this is just an easier way to read a SQL statement. You can just not have to worry about concatenating the string. Now, for those who are looking very carefully, you can see that, yeah, there's still a little imperfection. Thanks to our German friends who yesterday pointed out that, hey, this doesn't work so well in Germany, because our date format is a little bit different than the US date format. So yesterday late, we were scrambling to fix that, and it's now fixed, as I said before. But this is one of the additions that was made just yesterday. Another way we use that same, before I leave that point, so here we are using the access rules for escaping. Of course, you can imagine a string format T-SQL function that uses the SQL Server rules for escaping strings and dates. Maybe both of them will have single quotes. And otherwise, the code is the same. So from the time that we shared this with a little bit wider audience, several people have already started to refit their code with these string functions. So apparently it's rather popular. Another string function that I want to touch on, the last one, is string to dictionary. This is another idea that I have been using for a long time, and we're doing this now in Northwind as well. The problem is related to open arcs. So if you are someone who often passes in values into open arcs, you might just do your do command open from blah, 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 7, user ID, whatever, company ID, order ID. And sometimes you have to pass in 2 values, and you might say user ID, vertical bar, company ID. What I wanted to do with this is make that a very regular process, a particular pattern that we're going to use exclusively. And we were going to name our variables so that the next programmer wouldn't have to go try to figure out what is the first value, what is the second value, is this a job ID, is this a customer ID? We will name our arguments. And a way to do that already exists. If you think of a query string in the browser, it does exactly this. It's a collection of key value pairs. Key 1 equals value 1, and key 2 equals value 2, etc. And you just string them together. And now we write one function that can deal with a string like this and turn it into something that's a little bit more manageable. And we chose the scripting.dictionary object, which already exists in, if you set a reference to the Microsoft scripting runtime, which has other really great things, but for now, the scripting.dictionary object, which essentially turns your string into real key value pairs. And then you have the ability to use some of its other functions, such as exists, to test if a particular item exists or not, because sometimes they can be optional, right? We sometimes pass in a job ID and sometimes we don't. So then you can test for that, and all do that in a very consistent way as the dictionary object already provides. So we basically do a double split on the ampersands and split on the equals. Well, we didn't do it that way. Okay. We did an in string on the to find the equals.
So Tom, this could be a topic on its own, and we only have 9 minutes left, and I need to talk about inventory. So I'm going to cut in on you.
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay.
We will talk about inventory next.
Really, so much of what we have to talk to you guys about could be a presentation on its own. So if there's, after you go through the templates and there's a topic you'd like us to talk about, reach out to your user group leads and they can contact us and we can set up discussions. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about inventory, and first I want to give you some of my background. I am certified in production and inventory control from DePaul University. I am also a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt candidate, so I have a lot of working knowledge about inventory. If a client came to me and said, I want you to build me an inventory system, my response would be this: great, we're going to do a requirements study. We'll document all your requirements, and then I will help you review third-party products that are available for you to purchase. Inventory is a highly complex issue. There's no way we could have put in Northwind one inventory system that you could just turn around and use. It won't work that way. So what we did is we started with a concept from Alan Brown. And just so you know that all the documentation and all the links that we have used, we had to use Microsoft links with this one exception to Alan. So there are many of people in attendance here who have great websites with great articles, but they were not Microsoft employees, so we couldn't put their links in, but you can find them. So let's talk about Alan Brown's concept around inventory. It contains three critical pieces: a stock take. Now we're talking about physical inventory in Northwind. What that means is you went to the shelf and you count the product and you say, this is how many we have at this time of the day. The other two concepts you need to understand are bought and sold. And if you want to know what's available, you say, when did I take the last stock take? What did I buy after that? And how much have I sold since then? And that's what's available for me to still sell. But what that means, and Tom, if you want to go to the next slide, is we have to work out, we have an initial concept here that we need to work out. We had to write our own requirements about what our process would be for inventory, and it's in the documentation online, what our 5, or I think we have less than 10 business rules that we're doing. The first one is orders come on a first come, first served basis. So the first person who asked us for almonds, we try to fill their order. The next person who asks us, we look and say, how much is left? Can I fill your order? And we continue to round robin through that until an order moves from the status of new to allocated. So anytime an order is still sitting in new, it can change whether or not we have the available inventory based on what happens in another order or the receipt of a purchase order. And I know I'm talking really fast, but we're going to try to walk through a simple example. So Tom, you want to do the next slide? Okay, so Northwind opened its doors and had 80 cans of peaches. So if we look at the orders in the sequence that they came in, and in this case, it's order ID because that's our key. You can tell by date. Tom, if you want to. So the first order came in and it was for 50 cans. And we said, great, we can give you your 50 cans. And that means we have 30 cans left. Let's look at order number 6. Great, we can fill that one. It only wants 5. We have 30. Now we have 25. Oh, I can't fill order 12 because it wants 28 and I only have 25. Oh, okay, order number 30 wants it, and we can do it because we have 25, and that means we have 5 left. But what happens if a customer calls up, customer 1 calls up and changes their mind and says, oh, you know what, I don't really want 50 cans of peaches, I only want 40. So Tom, if you want to go to the next slide. So what happens then is we change order number 5 to 40. And that means we have 40 left. We can fill order number 6 because it was already filled and moved on. We go to order number 12 and we go, hey, I can fill you now. And I couldn't fill you previously because order number 5 had 10 more. So I still have 7 left. Who can I fill here? Oh, I can fill number 42, which didn't get filled previously. So it's the concept of first come, first serve, and we start walking through and reallocating. You can look at how those functions get called within the application, but there are 3 key concepts, Tom, about bought and sold, which did we hide that slide?
We hide that slide, yes.
Okay, so 2 of the concepts we have to define are when is it bought? When did we buy the product? and when did we sell it? So our business rule says we bought it when we receive it. The fact that we've ordered it, we can't start counting it yet. It has to appear physically on the shelf. So that means we have received the order and it's now on the shelf and we can put it in a box and send it to someone. The concept of sold for us occurs when we move the order to invoiced, because once it gets invoiced, the next thing we do is shipping and it gets taken off the shelf to fulfill the order. So that's how this change of sequence occurred, because these other orders are still in a status of new and they can change.
Yep.
Okay, so that was inventory in 5 minutes. So
Okay.
there's a lot more we can talk about. If you want to have sessions about it after you look at the code, please reach out to your user group leaders.
So
Okay, Tom, you want to talk about how the multi-instance forms work?
I think I'm going to skip that because I already touched on it. Since we have 5
Okay.
minutes, I want to, I think, skip forward to a few other things that Northwind 1 didn't have that we have now. And an interesting one is this one here, our orders. And let's just delete this order because it is in my way right now for the demo. Our orders are from March. And similar to in Northwind 1, the orders are from 2006. And that never changes. Well, we fixed that. We can now make a change. So we can say reset dates. And when you do that, it says, you know, many users like to work with current dates. It really doesn't matter. But if you like to work with current dates, you can click this button. And it goes through a number of update queries. And it pulls the data forward to relative to today. So what we want to do then is, it says close your forms. And so now we are sitting here on 427. So if we had not used Northwind for 5 years, we click that button, they will all be for 2028. So that is very cool, I think. The other thing is somewhat in the same vein, also in system admin. We have the ability to add more orders. The idea was, you know, orders can be placed on the internet as well. So 5 orders just came in. And we can then look at those, and 5 orders just came in. And what we did was just write a little bit of code that says randomly choose numbers between this and that and create orders. And so that, and this is an internet sales. So that's the employee that took that order. So that way you can, you know, click that button a couple of times and create yourself a lot of test data. Of course, you can remove the requirement that it has to be between 1 and 5. And you can type in 5,000 if you want. And all these orders, if I do a shift of 9, it's probably going to show up here, right there. All new orders, all made today on the internet. And this just becomes better test data for us. And it's all kind of randomized. So sometimes there's one order line item with a quantity of 34, and sometimes it's something else. So 2 more things from the list of things we don't like about Northwind 1 have been taken care of here. The last item I want to re-emphasize, this was in the video, but I want to make the point about one of our collaborators, Dwayne Hookham, was challenged to create this for us. Give me 1 second. Yes. I found on the internet, I use DevExpress tools sometimes in the .NET world, and they have this fall catalog. And it looks, they created their own logo, and this is the fall catalog. And so as a link to them, and they use their .NET tools to do this, and it had a table of contents and whatnot, and it had pictures. And I asked Dwayne Hookham can you create that for us? He is a resident expert in all things report. And so he created this report, and it has a table of contents. Now think about it for a second. What that takes. We are here on page 3. How do you know that soup start on page 8? You haven't even formatted that far yet. And I can add and subtract categories and products at any time. And that will change. So this is not hard-coded. This doesn't come out of some hard-coded list. This all has to be calculated on the fly. And I'm not going to tell you how that's done, but you can look at the code behind and figure that out. And so he made it look exactly like that other report. There's the soups on page 8 and our order form. Very nicely done. So an example of really high level reporting. I think we should close and go to our thank you
Could
slide.
you show them the error handler, please? Because I think that would be very important.
Okay. Yes, of course. So we have one class module. We could have really created more, but you can go here and read more about it. This is a static class, meaning that the developer does not need to instantiate it. So we did not new an object of this type. It is just always there. And so in our error handler that we have throughout, this is an example of what that looks like. You can just reference that class object and call the handle error method and pass in some arguments. So really nice that this thing is always around. It never goes out of scope, just like, the application object or objects like that, the error object. So this is also something that you can use in your own application. Now, don't just copy paste the code. Be careful. It says here, export the file and then import it again. A simple copy paste is not enough. And the reason for that is some special properties that are set in a hidden part of this file. You can learn about that in this reference. Okay.
Thank you, Tom. There was not many questions, but a lot of chat. And if I should sum it up, I would say, wow. That's the right description. There are actually 2 questions. One that was answered already by Adrian's question. Axel asked, why is it necessary at all to deploy Northwind 2 as ACCDT? Why not just provide ACDB?
Because that is the publishing method. When you go to File, New in Access, and you browse the templates, they are all done as templates. That is the only way they are published. It is not a download of an ACCDB. It is a download of an ACCDT that then gets reconstituted on the client. Why exactly? I don't work for Microsoft. I could speculate, but I don't really know exactly the answer. But that is the only process. Now, we could have just created our own website and say, go here to download an ACCDB, and that would likely have worked. But we wanted to work within the Microsoft framework that was already there. We wanted to replace the old Northwind with these 2 new templates.
It's the same in all Office applications. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we don't have any questions, if you, as a developer, enhance or work and change things in Northwind, please let us know what you're doing up on the forums, because, maybe we'll do a republish and incorporate some of them as other options. This was a community-based build. None of us are Microsoft employees, and we shared this with you, and we hope that you'll share with us what you do with it so that we can share it with the greater Access community.
Yeah.
So we put up 2 email addresses. I'm Access All Stars USA because someone on Gmail took Access All Stars, so I had to do something there. And Tom, you can reach out to us. We will evaluate as a group later you know, what feedback we get and where we might go next with this. But share with everyone what you learned from this and how we can make it better.